Let's now discuss the judge who has been given Trump's latest case, the third indictment overall, the second federal indictment. The reason we care about this is that there is a sort of sub story to Trump's first federal indictment, which was filed in Florida and will be handled by Judge Eileen Cannon. Judge Eileen Cannon is a Trump appointee. And although we don't yet know for sure whether this is going to be a problem, a conflict of interest, there are already questions as to whether she would be a fair arbiter of that case. We have a very different situation with Trump's latest indictment, which was filed in Washington, D.C. ABC News reports the judge assigned to Trump's January 6th case is a tough punisher of Capitol rioters. The federal judge assigned to the election fraud case against former President Trump has stood out as one of the toughest punishers of rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attack fueled by Trump's baseless claims of a stolen election. She has also ruled against him before. The judge is District Judge Tanya Chutkan, former assistant public defender, nominated to the bench by former President Barack Obama. She will oversee the case that accuses Trump of trying to overturn the 2020 election. She has often handed down prison sentences in the riot cases related to January 6th that are harsher than Justice Department prosecutors recommended. Chutkan has also ruled against Trump before in a separate January 6th case in November of 21. She refused his request to block the release of documents to the House's January 6th committee. This is immediately becoming an area of focus for right wingers. Now, of course, the idea that this is a hand-picked judge by Jack Smith falls apart very quickly when you realize that in the previous federal case, it's a Trump-appointed judge that got the case, Eileen Cannon. Axios reporting what to know about Tanya Chutkan, the judge overseeing the January 6th case. It gives some basic information. Chutkan was born in Jamaica, went to UPenn Law School, Trump's alma mater, you might remember. She worked in private practice, became a public defender, trial attorney, supervisor, then joined the law firm Boyce, Schiller and Flexner, specializing in litigation, white-collar criminal defense, and was appointed by President Obama. She has some January 6th cases in her background, as we mentioned. Expect the character assassination to start very soon. And I cannot imagine that that is going to go particularly well for Donald Trump. Now, there's a couple different stories here. On the one hand, of course, you are going to hear from MAGA people that by virtue of having been appointed by Barack Obama, maybe by virtue of being Jamaican, that may come up. Remember, they talked about a Mexican-American judge who couldn't possibly rule fairly on the travel ban when Trump was president. They may use Chutkan's background. They may use Chutkan's alleged antipathy towards the Trump rioters by virtue of her tough sentences. Somehow they will argue this is not someone who can fairly adjudicate or handle this case. If you believe that, then you would also have to accept that Judge Eileen Cannon similarly can't for reasons of being too deferential to Trump rather than too antagonistic. So if they want to make that argument, then we are going to be able to say, well, what about Eileen Cannon? But there's a bigger story here. In a sense, I'm glad that this judge was assigned the case. I feel sorry for the grief that she's going to go through. I hope that if the MAGA people start blaming her for Trump's problems and start threatening her, I hope it doesn't happen, but I hope that everybody is ready to deal with that if it were to happen. But the point here that is extraordinarily important is that there is a movement which wants to minimize this entire Trump prosecution. And by this entire Trump prosecution, I don't mean just the third indictment. I mean all three indictments, the possible fourth indictment in Georgia, the Trump being found civilly liable for rape and defamation against E. Jean Carroll, all of it they want to reduce to either politically motivated nonsense or mere technicalities, sometimes calling them process crimes. These are not process crimes, and I'm going to delve into that more in a later segment. But understand the gravity of what we're dealing with here. We need judges who will take this seriously and who will not be, intimidated by Trump's presence. And when I look at Judge Chutkan's record, I see someone who's not going to be intimidated by Trump. This is very serious stuff. It needs to be dealt with in that way. Let's now discuss what opportunity does this present for the Republican wannabe nominees running alongside Donald Trump.